Hi guys, this is Vineet and I welcome you to this video. Today's topic is database properties in SQL Server. This is part 2 of this video series. If you haven't watched part 1 of this video, the database properties, I would highly recommend and suggest you to go ahead and watch that part first before you can proceed with this part. So let's begin. Guys, if you're new to this channel or if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please go ahead and do so. There's a subscribe button below this video. Click on that subscribe button. It will give you a bell icon. Click on that bell icon, select all notifications to get notifications regarding all my future videos. Let me give you 5 seconds so that you can go ahead and do so. Please go ahead. So guys, I hope you have subscribed by now and let's move ahead. There are some points to remember while watching this video. Please watch this video till the end to gain better clarity of the concept. And if it's possible for you, please watch this video twice or as many times as you like until the concept gets clear to you. Perform any exercises in your test and lab environments only. Do not touch any production environment or production databases. And we would like to know your thoughts regarding our videos, so please do share your comments, feedback, suggestions, reviews, any requirements, any day-to-day experiences with SQL Server. Maybe you can let us know about the situations where my content has helped you somewhere in some way. You can share your stories. We eagerly wait for your comments and would love to read them. So do send in your comments, guys. Let's move on. I have created some playlists for you to watch. Some of the major playlists are database design, tables, business continuity, SQL Server indexing, performance tuning, integration services, transact SQL. These are some of the SQL Server playlist. Apart from that, there's a new playlist going on which is Python programming workshop playlist which I had just started a few days back. So watch out that playlist as well. So why we create playlist is because playlists are the best way to learn about any particular topic. So for example, if you want to learn about database design area, I would highly recommend go to the SQL Server database design playlist and watch out all the videos. This playlist currently has around 72 videos and I will keep on adding videos to this playlist on a daily basis. The link for all these playlists can be found in the video description area, so please go ahead and check out the video description area. My channel page link is also present in the video description area, which is also given in this slide. There are more than 220 videos posted on my channel. So the list is increasing day by day, and as the more number of videos are being posted on a daily basis. Now let's come back to today's topic, which is database properties in SQL Server. And I hope you have watched part 1 of this video series by now. So let's continue with part 2 of this video series. Let me take you to SQL Server. So we were discussing the properties of the database. So let's take the properties of my AdventureWorks database. You may choose any of the databases. So these are the properties and we were discussing about the options. And today we have to discuss about the database scoped configurations. Other properties we have discussed in the previous video, so please go ahead and check that out. So let's talk about database scoped configurations. So if we talk about SQL Server 2016 and in Azure SQL databases, there are number of configuration properties that can be scoped to a database level. So these are database level properties instead of a server scoped properties. These are just pertaining to the individual database only. So these are database scoped configurations. Alright, so let's start with them one by one. So first property here is legacy cardinality estimation. So guys, if you don't know what is cardinality estimation, basically that is to know the number of counts required by each of the operations in an execution plan. That is the definition of cardinality. If you haven't watched my video on performance tuning, I have created some of the videos on cardinality and statistics, so please watch them out if you want to go into detail into what the cardinality is. Now let's talk briefly about this property, which is legacy cardinality estimation. This setting basically specifies the query optimizer cardinality estimation model. Property specifies whether legacy cardinality estimation model to be used for any of the primary databases. Currently this setting is set to off, and this setting is basically independent of the compatibility level of the database, and it is equivalent to setting the trace flag 9481. Yeah, we can turn this to on if we want. When we turn this to on, it will use the legacy cardinality estimation. So basically formula differs for cardinality or row estimation basically if we use the legacy model. Earlier version, newer version of SQL Server has the newer cardinality evaluation models. So if we still want to use the legacy model, we can choose this option, turn it back to on. If we want SQL Server to use the legacy cardinality estimation model. Alright, let's move on to next setting, which is legacy cardinality estimation for secondary. So these are for, this setting is for any secondary databases if in case we are using replication in SQL Server. So when we use replication, there are primary servers and there are secondary servers. So if we want to use the legacy cardinality estimation model for the secondary database servers, then yeah, we can set these options. So right now the secondary servers are using the model for the primary servers. So primary is set up over here, and that is set to off currently. We can set it individually for these secondary servers. The legacy cardinality estimation, we can turn it to on. If we want to turn, if we look at the settings, the legacy cardinality estimation is turned off for primary databases, but it is turned on for secondary databases. Primary, we select, if we select primary option, the secondary database servers will also use the cardinality estimation model for the primary databases. Otherwise, we can also keep this setting to turn off if we don't want to use the legacy cardinality estimation model. And again, this setting is independent of the compatibility level of the database, and it is equivalent to setting the trace flag 9481. Now let's move on to next setting, which is max top or max degree of parallelism. Alright, which basically specifies how many CPU cores should be used for any query processing, which is indicated by max degree of parallelism. We will go into this setting in much detail in our upcoming videos, but for now I am discussing this setting briefly. So this setting basically specifies the default max top or max degree of parallelism setting for the primary servers that should be used for statement. So here some counts can be set. It basically specifies how many cores to be used for query processing, and similarly we have same setting for the secondary servers as well, so we can specify it individually. So if we have any secondary servers, we can specify these settings. In all the scenarios, we don't use replication. So the settings for secondaries are only applicable in the situations whenever we are using the secondary servers in the replication. Now let's move on to parameter sniffing. Basically this setting enables and disables the parameter sniffing on the primary servers, primary database servers. Same setting we have for secondary servers as well. We will talk about what parameter sniffing is in our upcoming video, so stay in tune. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do subscribe. There's a subscribe button below this video. You need to click on that to subscribe. Now let's move on to next setting, which is query optimizer fixes. Basically this setting is currently set to off. When we turn this setting back to on, it basically enables the query optimization hotfixes on the primary servers regardless of the compatibility level of the database. So when this setting is turned to on, it enables the query optimization hotfixes on the primary database servers. Same setting we have for secondary database servers, which is currently using the model for the primary databases, and setting can be set individually for the secondary databases as well, like the settings we have seen before. So guys, we are done with the database scoped configuration section. Let's minimize it. Now let's go to file stream section. Now there are two settings available under this section. First one is the file stream directory name, which is this one, and currently it is set to blank. So this setting basically specifies the directory name for the file stream data associated with the selected database. So if we are using file streaming options with the database, basically we specify a directory over here. for any of the file stream data associated with the selected database. The next setting, if we talk about file stream non-transacted access, this setting specifies one of the following options. So we have on and off, on, full and read only options available for this setting. The setting name is file stream non-transacted access, and this specifies one of the following options for non-transactional access through the file system to file stream data. So basically this setting specifies non-transactional access. So it will not be any transaction based access. It's a direct access to the file through the file system to the file stream data stored in the file table. We will cover specific videos on file streams as well. For now, I'm just discussing these settings briefly. Stay in tune with us, guys. Please subscribe to our channel if you want to see videos on file stream shortly after some days. Please stay in tune with us. Alright, so this setting basically specifies non-transactional access through the file system to the file stream data stored in the file tables, and the options available for these settings is off, read only and full. And if file streaming is not enabled on the server, this value is set of off. So in our database the file streaming is not turned on, so that's why this option is currently set to off and it's currently disabled at present. So we will shortly cover some videos on file tables as well and the file stream settings. Basically there is one more setting is ledger database. So guys, let me talk briefly about this ledger database feature. So basically this setting is used to specify whether the particular database is a ledger database. So right now it is set to false, so it's not a ledger database. Basically this comes under the security features of SQL Server. So let me give a definition for you what is a ledger database. So basically database ledger or ledger database is part of the ledger feature, and the database ledger incrementally captures the state of a database as the database evolves over the time. So it captures incrementally the states of the databases as the database evolves over the time, while updates occur on the ledger tables. So any of the updates are holded in the ledger tables, and it basically captures everything like how your database is evolving incrementally over a period of time, and it logically uses a blockchain and a Merkle tree data structure to store the information. So this is basically a brief definition. We will dig deeper into that in our later videos. For now, this much of information should be enough. And let's move ahead to the next set of settings, which are miscellaneous settings. So first setting is under the miscellaneous section is the allow snapshot isolation, which basically enables the feature of snapshot isolation. Guys, if you haven't watched my videos on database snapshots, please go ahead and do so. This feature is related to the database snapshots, so please watch them out. Basically this setting is used to enable the database snapshot isolation from the database. So if it is set to true, otherwise it is set to false. So watch out those videos if you want to gain more clarity on what the database snapshots are. We have like five or six videos under the database design category. Watch them out. There are videos on snapshots. Let me move on to next setting, which is ANSI null default, and it basically allows the allow null values for all the user defined data types or columns that are not explicitly defined as not null setting while using the create table statement or the alter database statement. So any of the columns that are not specified with the not null statement, they will take default values as null. So this will be the default state. So if we do not specify any value for a column, the SQL Server will automatically put null value in that particular column unless it is specified with the not null clause explicitly during the create table and the alter table statement in the table structure. So this setting is currently set to false, which means it does not set null values by default for any of the columns. Next setting is unsee nulls enabled, and basically this behavior specifies it specifies the behavior of the equals and not equal to comparison operators when used with the null values, and possible values for this setting are true and false. And when this setting is set to true, all comparisons to a null value evaluate to a unknown value. So if this setting is set to true, we cannot compare any null values with any other values because the result will be unknown. We cannot exactly do the comparison with nulls. But when this is set to false, we can compare non-unicode values to a null value, evaluate to true if both the values are null. So if we compare two null values against each other, if this setting is set to false, that will yield true. Otherwise, the result of the operation is unknown if it is set to true. So next setting is ANSI padded enabled. With this setting specifies whether ANSI padding is on or off, and permissible values for this setting is true and false. True is to turn on this setting, false is to turn off this setting. We will talk about the set ANSI padding feature later. We'll talk in detail about that. But for now, just be aware that you can turn on ANSI padding via the database properties window in the options section. So this is the place where you can turn on these settings. Now next setting is ANSI warnings enabled. So what is that setting? So it specifies the ISO standard behavior for several error conditions. So when this setting is turned to on, it basically specifies the ISO standard behavior for several error conditions, and when it is set to true, a warning message is generated if null values appear in aggregate functions such as sum, average, max, min, standard deviations, standard EVP, var, or count. If any of these functions use null value, a warning message will be generated if any of the null values appear in the aggregate functions we talked about, and when this setting is set to false, no warning gets issued. Now let's talk about the next setting, which is arithmetic abort enabled. And basically this setting specifies whether the database option for arithmetic abort is enabled or not. So currently it is enabled, and possible values for this setting is true and false. And when it is set to true, an overflow or divide by zero error causes the query or batch to terminate. So when this setting is set to true, and if any error occurs like arithmetic overflow or divide by zero error, the query or batch will terminate. If the error occurs in a transaction, the transaction gets rolled back completely. And when this setting is set to false, a warning message is just displayed, but the query, batch, or transaction continues as no error has occurred. So currently this setting is set to true, which means that if any arithmetic overflow or divide by zero error occurs in our operations, in a SQL query or in a transaction, the SQL query will abort immediately. In case of transaction, the transaction will roll back. But if it is set to false, and if any errors occurred in the transaction, right, only a warning message is displayed, but the query or batch or transaction continues as if no error occurred. Alright, so let's move on to next option. So this option is concatenate null yields null. So basically it specifies the behavior when null values are concatenated using the plus operator in SQL Server. So this setting specifies the behavior when null values are concatenated. When this property is set to true, any of the string, if we add null to it, will return null as it is indicated by the definition. Concatenation of null will yield null. Concatenation of null to anything will yield null. And when this setting is set to false, the result will be a string. So if we do string plus null, and if this setting is set to false, we will get the string. But otherwise, if this setting is set to true and we concatenate a particular string plus null value, this will result in a null. Alright, now let's move on to next setting, which is cross database ownership chaining enabled. And basically this is a read-only value which is currently set to false, and it indicates if cross database ownership chaining has been enabled. And when it is set to true, the database can be the source or target of a cross database ownership chain. Alright, so right now it is set to false, but if it is set to true, this particular database can become a source of target of a cross database ownership chain. And we can use the altered database statement to set this property as well. Now let's move on to next setting, which is date correlation optimization enabled, which is set to false. Let's talk about the setting date correlation optimization enabled. And when this setting is set to true, SQL Server maintains correlation statistics between any two tables in the database that are linked by a foreign key constraint and have datetime columns. So basically what this setting does is, if this setting is set to true, the SQL Server will maintain correlation statistics between any two tables in a particular database that are linked by a foreign key. And these tables should have datetime columns in order for SQL Server to maintain the correlation statistics. And when this setting is set to false, correlation statistics are not maintained. So right now it is set to false, so correlation statistics are not being maintained for this database. Now let's talk on next setting, which is delayed durability is set to disable. We can set it to enable. We will talk about this setting basically specifies how you can control the transaction durability, and we will talk on this topic in detail later in our upcoming videos. So stay tuned, keep subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, please click on the subscribe button below this video. Now let's move on to next setting, which is read committed snapshot on. So currently this setting is set to on. So basically this enables the feature when it is set to on. So currently the read committed snapshots are turned on. If you haven't watched my videos on snapshots, please go ahead and do so. There are 5 or 6 videos available in the database design playlist. Please watch them out. Let's talk about numeric roundabout. So what is that? And basically this setting currently this setting is set to false. Basically this setting specifies how the database handles any rounding errors. Possible values for this setting is true and false, and when this setting is set to true, an error is generated when a loss of precision occurs in an expression. So right now this setting is set to false, so error will not be generated. If this setting is set to true, an error is generated when loss of precision occurs in an expression, and when this is set to false, the loss of precision do not generate any error messages, and the result is rounded to a precision of the column or variable storing the result. Now let's talk about the next setting, which is parameterization, which is currently set to the simple. Other option is forced. So let's talk about this setting, parameterization. When it is set to simple, the queries are parameterized based on the default behavior of the database. And when it is set to forced, the SQL Server parameterizes all queries in the database. So basically in the forced option, the SQL Server parameterizes all queries in the database. Otherwise, if it is set to simple, queries are parameterized based on the default behavior of the database. Now let's move on to next setting. We'll talk about parameterization, what it is in upcoming videos. We will create videos in each and every topic. So stay tuned. Now let's talk about the next setting, which is quoted identifiers enabled. This setting specifies database default. Currently this setting is set to true. So quoted identifiers enabled. This setting specifies a database default for whether the SQL Server double quote is used to specify delimited identifiers or whether it should use the varchar literals. Alright, so basically this setting specifies the default whether the SQL Server double quote is used to specify delimited identifiers or whether we should use varchar literals. Possible values for this setting is true and false. And we will talk about the options set quoted identifier later on in much detail. The database default setting can be overridden by the session setting as well. So we can change the setting in the query window as well. So it can be overridden by a session setting. And many client drivers set quoted identifier to on at the connection time. So we will talk about this setting more in our upcoming videos. So stay in tune. Let's move on to next setting, which is recursive triggers enabled. And this setting basically specifies whether triggers can be fired by other triggers. The term recursive means any particular trigger can fire another trigger. That is the recursive operation. So this setting specifies whether the triggers can be fired by another triggers, and possible values for this setting is true and false. And when it is set to true, it enables the recursive firing of triggers, and when this is set to false, only direct recursion is prevented, or the triggers cannot fire any other triggers if the setting is set to false, which is the current setting here. It is set to false, so any of the triggers cannot fire another triggers. And to disable the indirect recursion, set the nested triggers server option to 0 using the SP configure option. Alright, let's move on to next setting, which is trustworthy. And trustworthy is this is currently a read-only option which is currently showing false. So what is the meaning of this setting trustworthy? When displaying true, currently it is displaying false, but when this setting displays true, this is a read-only option which indicates that SQL Server allows access to resources outside the database under the impersonation context established within the database. So first of all, this is a read-only option, and when this setting is set to true, it basically indicates to SQL Server to basically allow access to the resources outside the database under an impersonation context established within the database itself. So it lets you access resources outside the boundary of the database as well. Alright, using the impersonation context that is established within the database. And impersonation context can be established within the database using the execute as user statement. Alright, so I'm giving just a brief statement over here. So impersonation context can be established within a database using the execute as user statement or the execute as clause on database modules. We will talk about this option in much detail later when we just make videos regarding this setting. We will talk in detail about that. Currently this setting is set to false, so impersonation cannot be done, and a database cannot access resources that are outside its boundary. Otherwise it is set to true. The database can access resources outside its boundary using the impersonation context using the execute as user statements. And this property can be set using the alter database statement as well. So let's move on to next setting. I will cover this setting in detail later on. So next setting is var decimal storage format enable, and this option is also a read-only option, and it started appearing with the SQL Server 2008, and when this setting is set to true, the database is enabled for the var decimal storage format. And what is var decimal storage format? var decimal storage format cannot be disabled while any tables in the database are using it. First thing is this is the point to note. If this option is set to true, which basically enables the var decimal storage format, and if this setting is set to true, any of the tables, if they are using the var decimal storage format, we cannot set this option back to false right at that time. So var decimal storage format cannot be disabled when any of the tables in the database are using it. And in SQL Server 2008 and the later versions, all databases are enabled for the var decimal storage format. But if we, yeah, this is currently enabled. So starting with SQL Server 2008 and beyond, all databases are enabled for var decimal storage format. So our current database is also using the var decimal storage format. These miscellaneous options are done. Let me see how much I have recorded. So I think that should be enough for today. In our next video, which will be the part 3 of this video, I will cover rest of the settings under the options. The rest of the settings remaining are the recovery and the service broker and the state. I will briefly cover these settings in my next video. So stay tuned guys. I hope you like this video. If you really like this video, please click on the like button below this video. And guys, if you are new to this channel or if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do so. There's a subscribe button below this video. Click on that subscribe button. It will give you a bell icon. Click on that bell icon, select all notifications to get notifications regarding all my future videos. Guys, do post in your comments to us any feedback, any suggestions, any reviews, any requirements, any day-to-day experiences with SQL Server. You may also let us know about the situation where my content has helped you somewhere in some way. You may share your stories related to SQL Server, and we eagerly wait for your comments and would love to read the same. Apart from that, if you have a good network of friends, guys, please share my videos with your friends and ask them to subscribe to my channel in case you feel these videos are useful for them as well, and if you feel that my channel can help them or benefit them in certain ways in their day-to-day life, and if you really want to help them, just share my videos with them and ask them to subscribe to my channel. This is the help I required from your end. So guys, I thank you so much for your time on this video today, and you have a wonderful day ahead.